There's one thing that connects us as human, and that's emotion.
So you're saying people don't have 5 minutes to listen? We've got 24 hours in a day. I mean, 5 minutes is nothing, right?
I do a lot of relational work, so family dynamics, religious trauma and spiritual abuse work.
Assalamu alaikum viewers and listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Side by Side. I'm your host, Kazi Shafiqur Rahman.
What I'm seeing throughout time is that what they're wanting has changed. What they want is an emotional connection.
What is it that men are lacking these days? I want to know.
No one is independent. Not a single person on this earth, I would believe, is independent. We make the worst decisions when we're emotionally dysregulated.
People don't listen to listen. People listen to answer these days.
People are quick to give solutions. A huge obstacle has been family. Isn't that what you both want in terms of investing in each other? If not with each other, who are you going to invest in? To have a healthy relationship, you need to be able to have...
Assalamu alaikum viewers and listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Side by Side. I'm your host, Kazi Shafiqur Rahman. Our guest today is Sister Fahima Ali, who is a psychotherapist dealing with mental issues, marital issues, premarital issues, and so much more. I don't want to ruin the surprise. Let Sister Fahima describe what she does in her own words. But before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, supporters and well-wishers, if you are enjoying our contents on Side by Side, please, you know what to do. Do consider subscribing to our channel on the platform you are tuned into. It is your subscription that motivates us and our team to keep going episode after episode. With that said, let's get straight into our show. So, Bismillah, Sister Fahima Ali, thank you for making time for Side by Side and its audience.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to finally be here because we had conversations, haven't we?
Yes. How has your day been so far?
Wednesday is always a good day. I meet with a few clients in the morning and then I'm free for the day.
Do you do that on purpose? Do you keep Wednesdays quite free, flexible on purpose?
I do Wednesdays and Fridays because if I have a full day, it's quite loaded emotionally. So I take breaks in between for myself.
Okay. So just for the purpose of our viewers, what is it that you actually do and what do your patients get from by coming and seeing you?
Okay, so I'm a psychotherapist, founder of Healing the Mind. I initially didn't have a niche, but now I do. So I do a lot of relational work, so family dynamics, a lot of religious trauma and spiritual abuse work. When I see my clients, a lot of the work I do is kind of where they feel heard, they share their struggles, they learn how to have a better relationship with themselves and their spouse, their family, their friends.
Who comes to you more often? Is it men or is it just for females, your work or?
No, so I see men and women. I do a lot of couples therapy as well, premarital counselling as well. So a lot now I'm leaning towards seeing more and more couples recently.
Okay.
But I think it's because of kind of generally the struggles that couples are having in their marriages. So
Did you say premarital? So people come to you before they get married to,
Yes.
What do they talk about?
What they want marriage to look like, talking about their fears with each other, what they would kind of want from each other, expectations. Would they be able to meet that need? If they think about like discussions around in-laws, what that family dynamic would look like. So there's a lot when it comes to like premarital, but it's an amazing step.
No, I think it is because I never thought people actually do go and see someone before, because normally I think, oh, it's all about emotions and everyone's in love and they just want to get it done.
No, it's something that I really root for, especially because one of the myths around couples therapy is people kind of think, let's reach out for a couples therapy because our marriage is in a breaking point. But we want to look at preventative measures. You don't come to a therapist and say, like, we're in the brink of getting a divorce or separating. So preventative measures would look like before you get married, have those conversations with each other. So you're a bit more transparent with each other. And interesting, more and more young people are coming to me. So I find that amazing.
Absolutely. And is it like South Asian people?
Yes, so I predominantly work with the South Asian community.
And is there a specific niche within that, like Bangladeshi, Indian, or
Not
Pakistani?
really. I see a lot of Bangladeshi clients. I see a lot of Pakistani clients. I have like a percentage where they're Black Muslim. I see, Indian, and I've also got a percentage that are not Muslim. But we cater towards like ethnic minorities.
So obviously, your job is dealing with people ultimately, despite their background, ethnicity, culture. What is that common trend that you see as when you see a human being? Like, what? Because I'm sure there's so many differences. But what are the common things that you keep seeing, like between a non-Muslim person, a Muslim person, African person versus, say, a Bangladeshi person?
The disconnect with people and themselves, the loneliness, not being able to be vulnerable. Because when you think about the world we're living in, everyone's in this hustle culture, everyone's in this like, I'm too busy. So, and everyone's like, instead of sitting with someone for 5 minutes and listening to how they're actually feeling, people are quick to give solutions around, do this. No one wants to be told what to do, but they want to be like, they want that space to share their thoughts. Most of the time we know what we want to do anyway, but it's like having to sit with someone and share our vulnerability. So the huge one is when they sit there, they'll tell me I haven't got anyone to speak to. And that breaks my heart because it's like we have so many people around us, yet we feel quite disconnected.
I mean, yeah, for me, even sitting here, like, how does it make sense? Like, you've got social media, you've got so many people around you. I mean, you have more friends than before. I mean, we have like random friends. I mean, obviously they're not really friends, but there's people, there's emotional connections there, like to some degree. And still people feel that they can't speak to someone.
Absolutely. Or they feel like there's certain parts of themselves they can show. And there's parts they can't show because they feel like they're going to be judged for whatever reason. The disconnect is a huge one because that person, where they're at emotionally, they're sitting with all these emotions, all these vulnerabilities, and they can't speak to anyone. So they're having to pay a therapist to listen to them. To think that actually, when we think about our community, it's always been about family. Family is everything, friends, community, all of that. And it's amazing. But within that, there's so much segregation.
Yeah, that's true. Because I often say to anyone that I come across, sometimes I share it on my social media stories where I say people don't listen to listen. People listen to answer these days. They're just waiting to respond back with an answer.
Absolutely. Like, just to give you an example, if I'm working with a couple, you will see both of them are just waiting to respond back to defend themselves because they're in that state of defensiveness. And the biggest thing that I hear when couples come to me is like communication. And when I work with them, it's never about communication. It's all the things that are happening underneath, right? If, like, for example, she's saying to you, why don't you help me with this? There's more about that around quality time or how it's being said. Communication, we all talk to each other, but are we listening? Are we understanding? It's those things, and it goes so much beyond that with layers.
What does listening mean? I mean, people can, interpret it in different ways.
Yeah.
To me, what it means when my wife talks to me, I'm actually listening. Like I'm picking up clues.
Yeah.
Maybe she's saying something, maybe she's not saying something, but I still need to pick up those clues. What is that? What it means, or is there something else?
So when you say you're listening, are you listening to the words, or are you listening to her body language? Are you listening to her facial expressions? What are you listening to exactly?
I'm generally inquisitive, so I'm looking for clues. Is there something behind what's being said? Is there another meaning to what's being said? What's the context? Why is it being said? So those things, not to, respond back in some way, but just to kind of gather my intelligence in our relationship. Because with that intelligence, you're not going to know how to respond or react in certain situations.
I don't want to focus so much on you, but I find that really interesting because it's, wanting to read in between the lines. And I know sometimes a lot of us, we do that, but if that's happening often in a relationship where you're having to figure out what's being said in between the lines, I'm thinking about, well, something's happening with the emotional safety. Why is she or why is he speaking in that tone where he's not fully saying it to you. You know, we can't guess what someone's thinking, but if they are, then you know, the way I'd approach that is like, is there anything else you want to say? You know, I'm here to listen.
So that could it not be done in a positive way? So the context I'm speaking from in a positive way, like that I want to know more.
Yeah.
As opposed to just, that's what's being said and that's what I've heard and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, so if you want to know more, just say, I want to hear from you more. And it's that, you know, we kind of deliver something knowing that we've got time for them.
Yeah.
So when I think about listening, you know, it's my job 24/7 all the time. That's what I'm doing, right? So listening for me is really putting myself like away from this and stepping into the client's shoe. What is it like to live in their world, viewing the world the way they do? What is it like to be in relationships with family and friends for them? So it's got nothing to do about me, my family, my friends, and how I live my life. It's really putting myself out of the room, but having that human-to-human connection with them to make it fully present and attentive about them. I want to know what it's like to be you, so I can fully have empathy and listen to you.
So I know it's easier said than done. I mean, someone who's got no emotional connection, we can disassociate ourselves from certain situations. But what is it like, you know, how can people actually apply those techniques, listening techniques in real life when, dare I say, shit hits the fan?
Well, you know, how can you apply it? The moment you notice that your partner has come to you, and I say partner here, your partner has come to you with an issue, give them at least 5 minutes. And I always say this, give them at least 5 minutes to say what they need to say, be attentive, see how are they feeling. And if you're not sure, you can ask. Sometimes you can't pick up on how someone's feeling. Ask them without making it about yourself. A lot of conflicts that come up in couples sessions or, you know, marriages, it's like, you know, they're both fighting for the space. They're both like, well, you did this to me and you did this to me, and they're both fighting. But there's time for each of you to talk about your issues, but no one's giving that time. And I think there's this level of like, I need to say everything now and I need to get everything to be fixed right now. We're in this culture where we want quick fixes, like I say. It's such a common thing, but they also see it when they're having arguments. Arguments isn't the issue. I think it's the repairing. They don't know how to get back in harmony with each other because they're in that place of, I didn't get to say everything I want to say. But we can exhaust ourselves saying things again and again, but if it's not landing, then we're not going to feel heard. Neither of you are going to feel heard. So what would it be like just to give that 5 minutes and connect with them? And because there's one thing that connects us as human, and that's emotions, that's pain.
Yeah.
Like, even if you haven't gone through that specific thing, once in your life you have felt pain. So you would know what it's like to feel pain, to connect to that person. You can give that 5 minutes and listen to them, either they're worried or sad, because you felt those emotions as a human.
So you're saying people don't have 5 minutes to listen? We've got 24 hours in a day. I mean, 5 minutes is nothing, right?
Truly, to tune into someone and listen. So like when I always talk about it on my social media around like, you know, your support system. I'm not talking about have loads of friends, loads of like family members that you can connect to. A human being needs at least one person that they can feel they've taken all their masks and be their true authentic self. And we're still figuring out what that even means, to be our authentic self, because, you know, we're working on self-awareness right now and learning about ourselves. So like truly where someone can take all those masks off and share what you need to share, because there's a lot of people who leave this world with so much secrets to the grave, right? And that's okay, but it's sad when people are living a very isolated, lonely life where emotions are being suppressed. And what happens is with all that emotion, we act out, we project, we start hating on each other. We take it out on each other. But a lot of it's our stuff because we haven't processed it.
Some people might say, well, talking about it is just opening up another box of Pandora's, you know, where more people will tune in, more people will talk about it, and you may forget, but others won't. Like, for example, in a hypothetical situation, I'm going through some issues. Now I go and share that problem at my house, in my mom's house, for example. Like, I may forgive my wife, we'll make up, we'll move on, but the record stays.
Well, 100%. And that's why I said, why go to family and friends? They will always want but the best for you, right? A lot of family and friends would want the best for you. They'll probably speak on your behalf because
Yeah, they
you're the
become your
son,
advocates.
right?
Yeah.
They'll be advocate for that. Everyone that speaks who hasn't done any work on self-awareness or like just connecting with themselves, you will notice that people advise you, but from their own experiences. That's not the advice you need. In therapy, that's why people come to therapy. I am someone that you don't know anything about. I don't know anyone else in your life but you. So my work is to give you the tools to decide and make decisions, feel comfortable and confident in making decisions for yourself without me having an agenda, without me having these biases. Oh gosh, I feel sorry for the mom, I feel sorry for this person. No. But your friends and family would want best for you, but it doesn't mean it is what's best for you.
Yeah, next time someone has a fight, they should consider seeing someone that is unbiased.
Absolutely. I advocate for it so much. And, I'm so pleased to see, when I think about the clientele that come through my service, a lot of them are young people. I've worked with young people and I've worked with older people as well. And similar issues, if I worked with elderly people when they talk about some things, and I spoke to like young women who got married, similar things, about feeling seen, quality time, love, care. And it's so interesting because even though there's a huge gap between the elders, I'm going out of the context here,
fine.
but if you see a huge gap between the younger generation and the elder generation, even though the struggles look different, but it's similar in terms of what they are experiencing, because they know what it's like to be under pressure. They know what it's like to have financial struggles. They know what it's like. And that's what, the younger people are also experiencing. I love it, the fact that younger people are more and more open to therapy because they want to be better so they can be better for their connections in the people in their life.
Does everything need to be spoken about though?
Only if you feel like it is coming up as triggers and it's impacting you in your day-to-day life. When we talk about generational trauma, when we talk about childhood trauma and all these kind of buzzwords that get thrown around now, a lot of that doesn't creep up, but it does creep up when you get into a romantic relationship, because all the things that you wanted as a child, you then place it on your partner. I want love, I want care, I want this, I want to feel like, you respect me, all those things. That's when the triggers start coming up. So a lot of people won't do any work, but a lot of people come to me the moment they're like, I'm looking to get married, or I'm married now and all of this stuff is coming up. So when I sit with a client, I say, I can do that work with you. We can start from childhood as a timeline, right? See what's come up, where things connected, put the puzzles together. But I wouldn't advise that you talk to me about something that you've processed already, because you're going to be re-traumatized, right? Because us day-to-day living, we're also healing by living, by connecting, right? So for example, you've been with someone who was really abusive. You don't trust anyone anymore. You think everyone's the same. The moment you connect with someone who's healthy and who's giving you that love, that person is healing that part of you, because now your nervous system is making space for a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. It's like pain is like, I guess, our body parts. If you have a cut, then it takes some time to repair, and then it repairs. And then if you keep thinking about it, then you look at it. And obviously I'm a human being. I've had my struggles in life, and I still do. Every few weeks, whether it's work, whether it's home, whether it's whatever. As a human being, you have your ups and downs. And I try my best not to remember the bad memories, because ultimately, just reliving it again, is it going to add any value to what I'm doing in my future? No. So it's hard, but it's so important to, as you just said, to just not reprocess something that's already been processed.
Absolutely. It's like, what you're saying is like, if we think about the past again and again, we come to that place of rumination, and that's going to like suck you up, isn't it? But in that process of what you're doing, like whether you're in therapy or reading books or podcasts, you're learning to build on resilience to whenever things are going to happen, because things always happen. You learn to have those tools in order to get through it without pushing it away.
Yep. Now, let's rewind back slightly, because ultimately we are human beings. We like connections. We thrive on connections. we can't live, in isolation. Never. We can try, but ultimately we need connections. Why is it that, and I'm talking purely from a South Asian Muslim context, let's start with women's side first. What do women or sisters, what do they want from a man? What is it that men are lacking these days? I want to know. And I want my audience to also know. What are we men lacking?
You know what it is? I think, what I'm seeing throughout time is that what they're wanting has changed. It's changed because day to day things are changing a lot. So at one point, if it was like finance and now woman is making money, what they want is an emotional connection. And I just recently spoke about it. They're wanting quality time. They're wanting to see that you can make effort, you can be attentive, you can appreciate them. They don't want to just be like, oh, we're playing this role of husband and wife and we're going to have these kids because that's what we do and that's what we've seen our ancestors do. You're this age, you get married and then you just have kids. Because what's happened is there's been absent fathers or absent mothers, right? What they're wanting is real connection. So when I talk about that connection I do with my clients, my patients, that is what they're wanting with their partner, because ultimately you and him are a team. So when women are speaking about men, they feel like there's a lot of emotional intelligence lacking. Now, I have a thought about this, and my thought is I can't expect a fully grown man, and I don't know how others will feel, but I can't expect a fully grown man to be fully emotionally intelligent. Why? Because whether you're a man or a woman, even though I know as a woman, we are emotionally more tuned and quicker in those things. Because those things didn't exist. Everything that we're learning now, we are relearning and unlearning. We are dismantling. We are breaking cycles. We're doing all of these things now. And I say this to my audience, like when you are connected with these men, it's not, I want you to be emotionally intelligent. I want to see that you are open to working on that. I want to see that you can have emotional conversations with me. I want to see that I can come and just talk to you and you can listen without telling me what to do. Without, not in a controlling sense, but without giving me a quick fix. Because me talking to you is me spending quality time, me connecting with you, me knowing that you're here to listen, like you're not in a rush. So a lot of women are feeling like they just don't want to settle for like, oh yeah, he provides for everything. They want more and they're asking for more. And I think because they're asking for more, it's wobbling men quite a lot, because I think women are tired. And I think men are tired too. I think men have it really hard, and I think women have their own hard. But it didn't, when we hear these conversations happening on social media, it didn't just happen overnight. Everything, it's through time, slowly. At some point, women started to feel unsafe with men. Women started to feel like, I can't trust you, you can't do it for me. Whether they seen it through their mums or their grandmas, something changed somewhere. It didn't just happen overnight. So like, these conversations that are happening online, I always think it's quite surface level, because we can't just say like, women are the problem or men are the problem. It happened through time. And I think there's a lot of pressure on men to be financially stable to a point that they're in this state of frozen, like, that trauma response of being frozen, like they can't move either way, but also they struggle to be vulnerable. So it's like they're isolated with their pain. They don't want to talk about it. Because men don't cry, but that's such a Western thing.
Should men cry?
Why not? Didn't Allah say to cry when you're making dua? So vulnerability has shown in our faith a lot, both men and women. So no one's telling you to go and cry to everybody, but you can share your pain. That's how you'll connect with another human, with your wife. I guarantee you.
Would that look a bit weak? Because some wife or woman, they might say, oh, he's like a crybaby, like, well, he's crying, like, look, it's childish.
When I say vulnerable, I don't always mean like go and cry to your wife every day. Absolutely not. But you do need a space to share. Isn't that what women do, emotionally support? Because that's what we're good at. right? So if you can't go and tell your wife, who are you going to say it to? Yeah, you'll pray, of course. But if you don't have that place, then she's there with, like, you know, supporting you but not knowing what's going on. She can say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. Meanwhile, you're struggling financially, you're feeling that pressure because you want to keep up. But I promise you, the moment you start being transparent and honest with your wife, she will be there to support you. She'll be like, you know what, I need to support him now, he's struggling. Isn't that what both want? Isn't that what you both want in terms of investing in each other? If not with each other, who are you going to invest in?
Okay, so there are now, I think we're living in a time, marriage for some people is more difficult. Maybe people that have prioritized career, you know, success, and I'm talking both genders here, men and women. But generally, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am wrong. Men, if they want to get married, then they will find a solution. They can get married somehow.
Yeah.
But with women, it's somewhat more difficult. It's slower, the process. Why is it?
Is it slower?
I don't know, because I hear stories where someone wants to get married and they're not able to find a suitable partner.
So I work with men and women, and I see the struggle on both. The thing is, it's such an interesting dynamic. Both want to get married, but both hate, like they're hating on men and women. That's not the solution. So like every single person that is like disliking each other, they want to get married, right? So the question isn't like, you know, why is it hard for women or men? I think what's happening is because there's this defense up, right? Or I can't meet that expectation, let me shame them instead of being vulnerable. Both are struggling, because I work with men too, so I see that they're struggling. Ultimately, you know, for women, what they're slowly realizing is, I don't need a man, right? But we do. So I don't need a man because I can provide for myself. I can give a roof over my head. I can do all those things. But they're tired. A lot of, you know, and I think, you know, I'm going to use that term, but it's used in a negative way, independent women. No one is independent. Not a single person on this earth, I would believe, is independent, because we always pick up our phone and speak to someone because we need to. I'm not talking about romantic relationship generally. We're all dependent on something.
Absolutely.
You can't do everything on your own. If you are, that's hyper-independence. We're going to talk about trauma then, right? Something's happened somewhere where you feel like you can't trust anyone, or they betrayed you, or you feel like you can't believe women or men anymore, or people in generally. You've isolated yourself, and that's a sad place to be in.
Do you think it's expectations, like high expectations? Like, I think people are just not moving from the expectations. Like there's certain, obviously Islamically, there's a framework on what to look for when you're getting married. And generally, piety is number one priority, and there's, you know, 4 other ones. But now we've got our own priorities, own, you know.
How do you and I decide what is a high expectation for a person? So if I was to say, okay, name a common thing someone asks for that you see as a high expectation.
For example, I'll give you an example. A woman wants a tall man. Tall man, 6 something plus, whatever, foot. So when I ask, like sometimes I prompt again and again, like, why do you want a tall man? What is it? What does tallness represent? Generally, from my, you know, very humble way of, like, you know, doing some research and, you know, understanding people, I'm very curious about people, why they do what they do. So I ask questions. And it all boils down to protection. Like they want that safety, the protection. Like this tall man, maybe they're attracted generally, but there's an element of emotional need, and that's probably safety. So a lot of sisters, they write themselves off by putting that expectation. But instead, if they were to just focus on, has he got stability? Is he stable? Has he got the infrastructure? Has he got a good relationship with his own parents? Has he got a good relationship with his brothers and sisters?
Absolutely, yeah.
Then maybe a lot of I guess, that expectation wouldn't be there, and they would probably have one less problem to worry about.
How tall are you?
5'6", and I think generally Bengali men are around that, unless you have an exception. I've got a younger brother who's the youngest, and he's like, I don't know, 5'8" or 9. Or
I asked because I find it really interesting that when I asked you about high expectation, the first thing you thought about was the how tall a man is. Every single woman that I've spoken to who have said they want tall has never been their top 3 in their requirements. Not a single person. Not a single one of them said 6 foot either. They have an idea of what they want. But this 6 foot, just like this meher and dowry conversation that goes on, these buzzwords, it's all like hearsay. Because we're not actually speaking to individuals. I speak to people day to day in my life, right? 6 foot is never a thing. And every single guy that has been 6 foot, I asked them, I said to them, like, kind of, when you're connecting with women, what do you connect for? They like shorter women. So why is it the
so we have a problem here.
So my thing is, why is it a scrutiny when a woman is saying, I like tall men?
No, there's no problem in liking tall men. Absolutely
but it's a
no
high
problem.
expectation. It's seen as a high expectation.
No,
isn't
it's not.
it?
But I think when say if they're hitting their 40s or something and they still need to get married and they still have that expectation.
If you're telling me someone didn't get married because that expectation has been thrown at them all the time, I'd see it as a problem, because I know, I don't know if my brother's going to come at me, but my brother's not that tall. He's married. He didn't get rejected because of his height. All the men that I've spoken to that are shorter, they didn't get rejected because of their height. Yes, depending, the 6 foot is what bothers me is the 6 foot, because that is a myth. Yes, women like tall men.
Why? That's the point that I'm trying to get to.
It's something about like feeling protected, right? But also, like, if we flip side, men want to feel attracted to their women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it not? So like, there's these expectations that are thrown out, but they're not the requirement, right? So when I work with clients and they're in this process of looking to get married, I say to them, I want only 3 things. Screw your list. I want 3 things from you that is, it has to happen, or I'm saying no to this talk. Everything else could be like compromise or conversations, but 3 things you must have. Because we narrow it down. If you're going to write a whole list, we're not getting anywhere. And I think in those 3, it's never been tall.
Okay.
It's a conversation that happens a lot on social media.
It is, because and to be honest, some men also like taller women than them. There are some men.
Absolutely. All the time, I see it. You know, there's something happening. You know, people say preferences. Women have preferences. Men have preferences. Everything gets dismissed for preferences. The only problem with me that I have when it comes to preferences is when you're going to name your preferences, don't put another kind down. Don't put a whole other criteria down, right? Because that's when it's problematic. You can have preferences, not at the process of like degrading anyone else.
Hey guys, I hope you have been enjoying today's episode of Side by Side with myself, Kazi Shafiqur Rahman, as your host, and our guest, Sister Fahima Ali, who is a psychotherapist dealing with mental issues, premarital issues, and postmarital issues. This episode was brought to you by Get Micro, a web design agency that's based in London who create beautiful websites for entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses for less than £900 delivered within 10 days or less. If you are looking for a beautifully crafted website to express your products, services, or your ideas, please visit Get Micro. If you are enjoying this conversation so far, please do consider subscribing to our channel on the platform you are tuned into, and do share it with your family and friends. With that said, let's get straight back into the show. So what do you think, given the time that we're living in and given the role that you do, the job that you do, what would you advise sisters to look for? Like, if they were looking for, I guess, potential suitors, what should be the 3 criteria that they should look for? I know Islamically we've got our own criteria, but in light of recent
It's so
climate.
interesting. I mean, every time I put a post about like questions to ask when you get married, those are the videos that go viral, because you can see the need out there, isn't it? So for me, like, I would say to the sisters, like, when you're connecting with the men, and these are going to be serious topics, like, speak about finances, speak about emotional connection in terms of, like, you know, when he's angry, how does he express that anger? Talk about living arrangements. That's a big one, because you know, there could be so many things to speak about, and we can meet up so many times and talk about so many things. That's not the issue. The issue is no one's being transparent. No one's being honest when they have these conversations. A lot of it is, let me just get married to her and then I'll deal with it after. And she's thinking of this romanticized version of what marriage would look like. And they get married and then, like, oh gosh, I'm doomed. I feel betrayed now. I've been deceived. He didn't tell me he was in debt, or she didn't tell me she had this past. Like, that's what's happening. You know, I would never be, as a therapist, I wouldn't be the person to say to them, like, do this, do that. That's not my role. But I would give them guidance based on the things they share about themselves, looking at their values, their beliefs. I'm like, okay, so around your values, maybe this is a good question. And they'll go away and ask. But ultimately, the conversations that are happening, no one's transparent.
Who are more transparent in the equation and who are less transparent? Is there a percentage?
I think both play a part in being transparent. Whether it's, I think with women, when men are saying what they're saying, they're not hearing them. They're getting married in hope. That's a dangerous place to.
That's so true, you know.
Very dangerous.
I've seen that happen time and time again. The guy is saying something, but you're translating it in what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Hoping it will change, but it doesn't, because he's going to be like, I told you everything before I got married.
Yeah. So if he is saying that to you, if he is saying, look, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, believe him. Don't think for him. We don't know what's going on in people's mind, but we can believe what's coming out of their mouth. But what's happening is, this is where we get into a place of vulnerability, because there's a crisis of a lot of women wanting to get married, a lot of men wanting to get married. In this place of desperation, again, I told you, emotion is important. When they get in that place of desperation, they end up settling and going for something they wouldn't have chosen if they were in that emotional regulation, because they think, I'm getting old, you know, my time's ticking, and all of those things. They end up making a decision because they're in that place of desperation, even if he's saying the right things about himself.
Some men I know, they discuss living arrangements, and they're very clear from day one. Look, I know this is my family structure. I am the only son, and here's my responsibility as a son, and here's what's going to happen if they were to get married. But sometimes I've seen as well where someone was hoping that he would change his mind along the way. Do you think that's fair?
No. If you've had a conversation around living arrangements and he's been clear to you, then if you decide, I'm going to marry him in hope, and that hope doesn't work out, you're going to resent him and you're going to resent yourself, but you're not going to be honest about that. You're going to project it on him. This reminds me of a video I done around, this is the one I got a lot of hate for. I done a video for the women as to some of the reasons they want to move out, and then I done a video for the men, some of the reasons they want to stay, whether it's looking after my parents or financial difficulties. I got a lot of hate from men, and I was thinking, what did I say wrong here?
So men was hating on the video that you made about men, or the what?
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if what it is that they thought. But of course, I accumulated all the reasons based on what the men have shared. I shared it in the sense so the opposite gender knows some of the reasons, right? Just to amplify the voices. But I got a lot of dislike from it. I think they thought I was against it, but that wasn't the video. It was just me giving a list of reasons. And someone wrote something like, oh, you know, she'll end up in a care home. And I was like, okay, they really took that negatively, and I couldn't understand why. So I don't always challenge people on my comments, but I had a conversation with a guy because he got really angry. And I find it really interesting. I don't take it like personal. I think he's very triggered. Okay, what is that about? And usually it's what people are going through. They're basing it on their lives. So he was like, oh, these women will never take my mother's space. So I said to him, what was it about that video that you took in a negative way? And he's like, oh, you're saying all of this. I said, well, isn't that true? Aren't those the reason? He said, oh, yes. He's like, sorry, sister, you're one of the good ones. and this is what I mean in terms of emotional like intelligence and having a conversation, because sometimes I do give the airtime to people in my comments because I'm curious about what I'm a therapist, I'm curious about what's going on behind your thought process. And every time I did do that, they were like, oh, Fahima, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But that really sparked up a lot. I think when it comes to living arrangements, again, it didn't happen overnight. I know even till this day, a lot of women say they're happy to live with in-laws. It happened through time, throughout history, because we've seen our mothers suffer, our grandmas suffer. It happened somewhere, right? It didn't just happen overnight. At some point, women started feeling unsafe, or they feel like they won't be protected, or you're not going to back them, what they want from their husband. A lot of women would say to me, I'm happy to live with in-laws as long as that space is safe for me, right? As long as I know that he will be there and I won't feel bullied, because we know these dynamics happen, within the community. We know these dynamics happen. But with what's happening is, like, when they state that, they're scrutinized for it. You're not understanding. Again, when I talk about really understanding someone's pain, she's saying that because she doesn't know if things will be more worse in her marriage, living with family. And that's not blaming the in-laws. That's just understanding that if you live separately, you will have more of a better, healthy relationship with your in-laws as opposed to being in each other's faces. Then we put the question of finances, right? There's an actual crisis with men when it comes to finances, but there's a lot of women I know in marriages that are paying for half the stuff. Women are, but it's not being named and it's not being seen.
I know finance is a very difficult one, and the way things are, the way the world is moving, the decisions made by politicians for us has an impact on our life, the way we live our life. And it's very difficult. I think if someone's earning like 2K, under 2K, I don't know how they will manage to not only look after themselves and do the things that they want to do, but also support their family. It's
hard.
It's crazy.
It's so hard. And that's one of the biggest mental health when it comes to men, right? When it comes to finances. That's one. And the other one is, I'm in between my wife and my mother-in-law.
That's a difficult one, by the way. That is such a complicated relationship.
So complicated. So like between his mom and his wife, there's this power dynamic going on. How does he manage that? And I've spoken to like my clients, and it's such a difficult place to be in. And you just feel like the world is closing up on you. Like, again, you don't have a place to share your emotions because she won't understand, mum won't understand. She birthed me. And the thing is, that's why I go back to, with your wife, if you can share your struggles, if you can share emotionally and connect with her those way, she will understand. A lot of women, they say, you know what, I've come from a very big family. I love that sense of community. I want to move in with your family. The moment they move in, damn, this is not going the way I wanted it to. And it's not about blaming and
It's a big habit change as well, isn't it? Like, like so many new people that you've never lived with, and suddenly, like overnight, your life just changes. And I just want to quickly say, our mothers and our brothers, like, say, I'm talking from a men's perspective now. I think they should help the newly married man get through, his first year, first 2 years, maybe. But I've seen like people kind of do the opposite. Like, do you not understand? This guy's going to get trouble when he goes to the bedroom. Like, he's going to go through some serious mental issues.
Yeah. I don't, when you think about someone coming to therapy who pays 80, 90, 100 pounds per session, let's just say 400 pounds they're investing into therapy. They didn't just make that decision because they want to talk about surface level stuff. They are really struggling. So when I look at cases, they're in a place where they're really struggling mentally. In a community where mental health is dismissed so much and not fully understood by the elders, even though they suffer from it so much themselves, where you say, why doesn't mother or sibling or those, everyone is thinking about their own selfish needs, unfortunately. I see mother and daughter, I see, father and daughter, like son, I have these dynamics of conversations with them. But everyone is, again, my pain, and no one wants to think about, okay, let me put my pain aside for a second and connect with this person's pain and what they're actually saying. even when we talk about marriages that we were talking about before, it's not just the men and women. A huge obstacle has been family. That man's not good enough for my daughter. That daughter's not good enough for a huge obstacle. Parents haven't made it easier for the kids to get married either. It's just not good enough, or they'll have all these requirements. And that's because they're in a place of fear themselves. If you're in a place of fear, how do you confidently make a decision for your daughter yourself? Or confidently say, yes, you can't, but still you don't want to say yes either. So they're stuck.
Do you think that's changing nowadays, slowly, where parents are saying, you know what, do you have someone? Because it seems as though like parents are finding it easier when the children already have found someone, and
Parents
it's just a
are-
case of doing the due diligence and, you know, just getting the deal done.
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of like love marriages, we say. We are seeing a lot of that. However, when we think about those things, a lot of it hasn't changed. Again, I work with people who are still very much in a strict way of like, no, it has to be, you know, arranged, which I think has its safeguarding, you know, element to it. I think there's pros and cons in everything. I love the way that parents used to do it, because then someone won't take advantage of you because there's parents involved. But also the apps ways, because, you know, a lot of women don't want to try apps and those things because it's such a vulnerable place to be in, right? But also their parents are not looking for them, right? There is nuances in all of these conversations. I can't say, yes, it's getting better, because I get to see the hardship of the ones that kind of come access to me.
Wow. It's a very complicated subject. And sometimes, you know, like I hear this phrase a lot. Again, I deal with a lot of people and I talk to a lot of people and say, I'll get married when Allah wills. What do you think? What do you make of that? I'll get married when Allah wills. And that's the answer. Do you think that's a sufficient answer?
No.
Then what should be the answer?
My question, I mean, my follow-up question to that is, okay, what are you doing about it though? Do you go to work? Yes, you do. Why? Why don't you stay at home and think Allah's just going to give you money coming through? You do, you know, ingredients have been given. Use those ingredients. Allah did, you know, isn't going to just bring someone to your house. You need to do the legwork for sure.
And I guess legwork nowadays, there's WhatsApp groups as well, like people pass around CVs, and I know people that have actually successfully gotten married and they are quite happy. And there are those who have also got married on apps and who also got married on apps and it didn't work for them. So ultimately, it's like talking about it over a 1 hour discussion. It just sounds like, you know, it's just a bit of a joke, to be honest, because such a complex matter. This whole two people getting to, it's not just two people, by the way, it's actually two families, two generations coming together, and there's so many nuances in place. And I must speak on behalf of the brothers here, and I'm feel free to speak for the sisters. It's a very, as I said, you know, this balance between my family and her, and then ultimately, as a result, her family as well. It's a very, very fine balance that we have to strike. And on one side, you know, Islam says, don't, you know, upset your mother, don't even let them say oof, and, you know, all those, you know, recommendations and advisories and warnings. And at the same time, you've got your wife, like, you know, where you have the immediate shock, like, you know, if you don't behave in a certain way, or if you don't take the right action. So for the brothers, it is very hard. It's quite hard. Because, and to be honest, again, as a human being, as a husband, as a father, I've been through it. My first 2 years wasn't really easy. But I think, looking back, I think it somehow worked for me. It's like where I tried to maintain a good relationship with her family as well.
I don't think you need to sit there and say brothers have it hard. Of course it's hard. Like, we know how it's done in the Bangladeshi community. We know, like, the expectations, not just from your wife, but overall the family, the sister, the brother, the aunties, the uncles. It just goes on and on and on.
And those comments here and there, oh my God.
All the time. So, like, my recipe would be balance. Find your balance. You will always have someone who wouldn't be happy with you. There will always be someone that would have something to say. We're full of opinions, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right? There will always be. But if you come to a place of like, I need to please everyone, you will lose yourself in that process. Right? So how do I manage like my family, her family? balance. And it's not how it used to be before, where every time there's guests over, every weekend, evening, people are coming to a place of like sorting their priorities. Like, I've got work next day, not having guests. Okay, once a month I'm gonna, do everyone come over, or let's go mums like once a week, or, a balance. My thing is, when it comes to you both, ultimately you both need to be in the same page. Your foundation needs to be concrete.
One team. It has to be one team.
It has to be, because if whatever he's being told, he can just hear it, but he doesn't need to do anything about it. I think for a lot of men, they're like, oh my God, I've been given this information. How do I hold it? What do I do with it? Don't do anything, because we make the worst decisions when we're emotionally dysregulated. When you're calmer, you make better decisions. So if your mum's coming and complaining about your wife, hear it, leave it there. Don't go and tell her, Same, even with her, if she heard something, calm. I always say, speak to each other in a calm state. What do you want? If she's telling you something, what does she want from it? Just listen. She's not telling you to do anything about it. But as men, you go in that fixer mode. Like, I need to do something about it. No, you don't. You just need to listen.
Would you advise your listeners and our listeners to read this book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus by Dr. John Gray, I believe?
I haven't read that book.
You haven't?
I haven't read that book.
Oh my God. I think after I've read it, and that was recommended by someone else, and I was like, why didn't I read this book before I got married? Because it's like we're speaking two different languages. You're speaking Bangla and I'm speaking English, and we're trying to communicate to each other, and I'm speaking to you in my language and you're speaking to you in your language, but we're not, translating in between.
Because what you're wanting from each other, no one's ever wanted that. It's so unfamiliar. You only know how you play a role because you saw your father do it, or you saw, your friends talk about it. You saw your caregivers do it. That's the family dynamic you grew up in. But a lot of us are in a place of, assuming just because you're Bengali, I'm Bengali, we do things the same. No, every single family has a way of doing things. And we do it because of the way we saw it. This is where kind of connecting with yourself and knowing yourself better and saying, actually, I love that about my parents' relationship. I want to take it on. Or those things were unhealthy. I want to dismiss that. There is always something to take and something you don't want to take. But when we don't ask ourselves these questions and sit and reflect, you're just going in blindsided. We know men and women are different. We know that. I know you speak about these books, but a lot of it was, even with psychology, a lot of it has been already mentioned in Islam, but we don't want to invest time in connecting. It's all mixed up with culture.
That big fat book comes as a wedding gift, like the Islamic roles and responsibilities of, like, who actually reads it? Nobody does. We don't. We're not interested in reading. No. We're just like, we just want to, as you said, we just want to dive in.
Put a video up that's longer than a minute, see how many views you get, and put a video up that's a short one, see how many views. People's attention span is just shrinking.
They just want like fast. Before it was fast food, now it's fast content. Like
fast content, valuable, quick. We don't have time to listen. Mindlessly scrolling. So it's like, again, when it comes to marriages, you're talking about, your marriage in 2 years. When I say about investing, people want to give up so quickly without investing. And I'm not talking about abusive relationships here. I deal with, let's put that aside. It is going to be difficult. You will have arguments. Work on how you want to repair and come back together. That's where I do the work when they talk about communication and, okay, you argued. I don't want to know what you argued about. I want to know how you connected with each other after. She stopped talking to me for a week, or he started, being avoidant or dismiss. Okay, let's think about, okay, you take your space, but name it. No one's talking to each other. They're just acting day to day, mindlessly.
Yeah, communication, I hear that word all the time, communication. But when you actually think about it, it's so hard to communicate. It is actually quite hard. And especially when people are tense, when they're angry, it's very hard to communicate. So is communication even, valuable? Because if certain people don't change, even after you've communicated, what's the point?
Well, if you're going to go and speak to them whilst you're angry and tense, then there is no point. Take a 5-minute breather and then go and speak. Allow, when we say, for me to be fully open in this space and even share with you, I need to feel a level of like comfort and safety, like take some risk assessments, to know that I can share with you. When it comes to a wife and a husband, and you got married, arrange or even getting to know each other for 3 months, you're still very new to each other. Work on building safety.
Absolutely. You know, like you said, putting aside domestic violence, that's a whole completely different ball game altogether. But just general get to know each other. People just think, you know, it's going to be the same as they were. Because normally when if someone is dating, a lot of it happens. So I can say openly, people think it's going to be the same thing, copy and paste. But it's so different. Now, how much does leverage play a part in a marriage? Should men and women alike, should they work on their leverage?
What do you mean by that?
Leverage as in improving yourself, making yourself so valuable that you somehow, through your own good actions and positive improvements, you become irreplaceable.
So we want to work in being secure in ourselves,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to cling on to my husband just because he's going with his friends and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Exactly.
why is he going? To have a healthy relationship, you need to be able to have space for yourself, space for your social time, space with him, but he can't or she can't be with you 24/7 or you're both going to do each other's head in, right? Leverage is working on yourself, securing in yourself. You're not anxiously attached. You're not avoidant because she keeps talking about commitment and you're so frightened to feel that you want to run, right? Do they have leverage on each other? If they're secure in themselves, I can be fully secure in myself right now, and man can sit here and be like, I'm earning this, I got this job. I won't melt. I'm like, I'm still secure in myself. Because the moment you become like that, you lose your self-esteem, your confidence, and all of those things. You lose parts of yourself. And actually, ultimately, and I believe this with both, men like confident women, women like confident men. But the power dynamic and the ego plays in the moment you can see the other one is like worried that you're going to leave because they have abandonment issues. He knows he's got power. She doesn't want to leave me. But when women do say they're going to leave, believe them too.
They're not just messing about.
They're not messing about. They emotionally check out first and then fight. It takes a lot to leave. And I'm talking about those that have been like staying and trying and trying. You know, when they say, oh, women are nagging, they're trying. They're still trying to communicate with you until they emotionally check out.
MashaAllah, I mean, while we're talking about the negative issues, but there are so many positive stories of successful marriages, power couples. I see quite a few of them on, and I know them personally, not just through social media.
Okay.
I see them, in real life and in person. MashaAllah, I always say MashaAllah, like, so beautiful to see, this thing still exists. There's power couples, the sister is successful in doing what she's doing and the brother is also equally successful. So Alhamdulillah, we have those beautiful stories.
There are loads. There are so many. Even the ones that come through therapy, when they leave or they have those light bulb moments in therapy where they're like connecting with each other and they come back and, just to see that, it's so amazing. Therapy is not a terrible thing, but, just to see that or, when you know of friends and family who are doing amazing doesn't mean they don't have problems, but they just can connect and they just, they got your back, either of them, right? There are so many, but they won't usually talk about it because people are in a state of fear of nazar, all of those things. So this is why I don't want to take the hope away. Whether you hear stories about apps or you hear stories about in-laws, whatever negative stories you hear, it's because no one's going to come on and say, hey, I've got the best life ever. People are in a state of fear as well. No one's going to be fully vulnerable. People are scared about, if I share my wins, if I, they're not going to say much. They're not going to be happy for me, right? There's that fear that we do hold. But that negativity, what it is doing though, for example, if we're hearing so many terrible in-law story, already you're guarded, you're getting married, you're anxious, and you're acting out. And that's on you. And your in-laws might not be that way. So I think a lot of fear is controlling people.
What age should sisters think about getting married? From what age? Because obviously it takes like a few years before the actual marriage happens.
When their prefrontal cortex is developed.
What does that mean? That's very complicated.
When this is fully developed, right? So when they can make decisions for themselves, when they know what they want, when they're clear about what they want, it's not just rehearsed and unfiltered through like generations, like this is what you want. When you actually can say, like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. I say that because then they can make decisions, informed decisions for themselves.
And what if they're so caught up with making decisions and then they forget, like, oh my God, sugar, we're like hitting 30s soon. Like, we're so careful about certain things.
Well, then they're staying in that place of fear, isn't it? They're not secure in themselves. Like, they need to do that work in being secure in themselves. I think there's so much to talk about when it comes to this. On one hand, knowing what you want, being clear. On the other hand, know that the world doesn't revolve around you. If you want to be in relationship to someone, you need to make space for them. You need to allow their values to...
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is my next point. I feel like there's a huge ego problem, like generally, like, I guess there's so many beautiful stories and power couples, alhamdulillah. I'm blessed to have one as well myself. So there are those who are actually like just belittling each other, like as if it's like a constant, game where like, they need to make the other one feel like, inferior. Is that the word? Like
Yeah.
more down?
But why do you think this is happening? I think there's a bigger picture to this. Like, again, I'm going to go back to social media. Every single person, like, a guy can come up with a mic and say about meher or sisters doing this, sisters dressed like that, and the woman can be talking about the men like that. If they think that's doing a good cause, it isn't. If what you're doing is amplifying the hate amongst each other, and that's really sad to see. I always think if you hate women, you're not ready for marriage. If you hate men, you're not ready for marriage, because you need to go and work on that first because you're saying all of that. Meanwhile, deep down, you do want a woman, right?
Yeah.
You do want a man. So, even I saw a video this lady posted, and she was talking to the sisters, and she said, like, good points. A man came in and he wrote something like, in a very sarcastic way, oh, you don't want the hijabis to see this. Your comment hasn't helped. If anything, if a sister saw that and felt like she's taken something in, the moment she saw your comment, guard's gone up. Like, the value of that video has gone because you still started to bring some hate on that. I think we need to be more open, because I believe that everyone that talks about things, they all still do it very differently when it comes to their relationships and their marriages. You don't need every single woman to obey you. You just need your wife. That's it. It doesn't matter what this person, that person is doing.
Do you think people are just so interested in drama these days, and it's all about drama? I mean, we've put Allah aside and Islam aside, like the broad regulation or guidance that we live by, which is Islam, which is a way of life. Do you think we're just so like interested in what's happening on the ground and the little nitty gritty, and it's all become a laugh and joke for us?
It is. People love drama, don't they? We had this conversation where, like, I really believe people won't watch a movie, but if you're on live, they'll come and watch your live because they want to know what's happening within your four walls. And it's, they're consuming all of that, when actually you need to go out and connect with the world. You need to go and like breathe in some fresh air and really connect with people as opposed to virtually. And I do kind of, when I speak to clients who are really lonely, who don't have connections, I always say, like, join these online, because there is benefits there. But in terms of where you're at, you need to have balance is key with everything. Self-love, loving others, everything. There needs to be this balance for sure.
Brothers having their own time. I mean, speaking to brothers, I feel like the sense that I get, maybe they're not saying it, but I feel like they have to be always worried about what their missus is gonna say. Them going out with their boys, their friends, like, oh, it's not. It seems like, we have this thing like, oh, how long have you got your visa for? Like, no, is it indefinite, or is it like a 2-hour time slot? Or why does it feel like this? Why should it feel like this? Isn't it in the best interest of the sister that this guy goes out and, has his outlets and, speaks to his friends and, has his, time out and then comes back home happy again?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I always say, when you're thinking about support system and when you're thinking about quality time and all those things, branch it out. It is so unfair to want all your needs met by one person, even if that means your romantic partner, right? So for him to have his friendship time, his gym, all of those things, he looks after himself to be able to pour into you. For her also, if you go and say to your wife, you know what, Friday evening, go do what you want, or Friday, Thursday, go have lunch with your girls, she will smile, because what you're saying is, go and have some time to yourself, and we will always come home back to the same house, right? It is so healthy to have different spaces, have friends that you can laugh with, have a space where you can share, your vulnerability with, connect with each other. I say this all the time with couples. If you are not dating, right, it's not just about, restaurant. No. Women think about the effort you put in. He went and he searched on the Google what restaurant to go to, and he took me, I got ready, it's the thought process behind it. You both do need, at least a day in the week where you're connecting, and connecting isn't staying at home. You need to get out of the house and connect. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you do need to connect. But whilst you're also making sure you have social time alone, me time. Every client that comes through, I always ask them, what does me time look like? What does that mean?
Well, they don't have me time.
No, because everyone's just in this life that we're constantly just going and doing this and doing that. But we're not stopping and just checking in with our body, our mind. How are we doing? People are burnt out and overwhelmed and overstimulated that they're not taking those times for themselves to just pause.
Social media just adds more fuel to the fire. Like, you're constantly feeding that brain of yours with content. And surely your brain is going to get tired at some point.
Yeah.
So for me to block myself from doing that, I just delete the apps, until I'm ready to use it again. So apps are going to come to use on my term, not because it's forcing into my life. Otherwise, I'll be waking up and, reaching for my phone and seeing what's happening. I used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And now it's come to, I have to take that measure where I have to delete the apps. I'll download it if it's my leisure time. So leadership in a relationship. You're the CEO of your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your car has one driving wheel or steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that then it feels like marriage can't have one leadership?
Why not?
That's what it seems like majority of the time. There's a constant battle. Like, who's going to be the leader? To me, in my mind, it has to be earned. That safety, as you say, or leadership has to be earned. You can't just throw your weight around, man or woman, to take the leadership.
So when you say earn, meaning for her to be a leader, she needs to earn that trust from you?
Equally, for the man to be a leader, if he needs to also demonstrate his ability to lead. If he's going to do random stupid stuff, then obviously she's going to lose faith in him to lead, and then she will have to step in.
It is earned, just like respect. All these things are earned. When we're thinking about leadership, in a marriage, that's why I talk about premarital counseling, and I swear, you're the man of Tower Hamlets, right? I'm not there. And I just think if you can make it happen, like with East London Mosque, premarital counselling needs to be there. There's so much funding going to these mosques, and premarital counselling needs to be there. I know churches do it. Why don't we have that in place?
Do you think that will solve the problems?
Many.
A lot of the problems?
Many.
Seriously? And you're saying a lot of divorces are happening just because of communication and they haven't really thought things through?
I'm not saying divorce is happening because of that. I'm saying we didn't really talk on divorces. I think divorces is happening because people know they can leave. People know they don't need to try as hard. But that's one category. And then there's people who've been trying and trying that they just can't anymore. They've lost themselves and they just need to start again. And this is where I say men don't do anything because they think she's not going to leave anyway. And then they're like, she's gone. How do I beg her to stay? She's mentally checked out. Women are tired. So, when I put out content out there, I think about young people and then I think about older people. The issues are very different. My content's not all for young people, neither is it all for the older people. I think, if there's a 25-year-old meeting a 25 or a 26-year-old and you want him to be financially established, you're kidding me. Because he probably just finished uni and he's got 2-3 years, if you need to, that's why young people they grow together, which is a great thing. They do grow. That level of patience is there. But a woman who is 31, 32, who's, she's had time to spend on herself and she probably spent it on her career and now she's sitting in front of a man. She's going to ask you if you're 36 or whatever, what did you do the last 10 years? She's going to ask. So, premarital counselling is something I always root for because that needs to be discussed.
Have you ever said to anyone like, listen, from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound good. Like maybe you guys should reconsider whether you want to go forward or not. Like just as an independent observer. Have you ever said it to someone?
I've never said to someone, don't be together. I've named the challenges they're having. As a therapist, I can never make a decision for someone. I've named my concerns, but I also, the way pros and cons, I would name that. There's been times where I'm like, listen, you're both just so disrespectful to each other. You know, where are we going with this? You don't even know how to speak to each other. But in couples therapy, you're a bit more direct than individual therapy.
So what should be, when it comes to obviously Islam's position is, the natural position is the man should lead the household. Has that changed? I mean,
oh yes, that's what you were saying. So leadership, I think, right, women want men to lead. They do.
That's what I thought as well.
Women want men to lead, but I told you, isn't it, that level through time, somewhere along the line, women started to feel, I can't trust you to lead. So they've had to step up and now they're exhausted. Ask any woman who's like 30 plus, who's probably doing everything herself, where, like, do they want to sit back? Yes, they do want to sit back. They're exhausted. They want a man to lead, but they don't feel like they can trust a man to lead.
Could it be just trust, or could it be something else? Maybe influence, external influence. Maybe she's got a friend that's also independent who's telling her, listen, you don't need to do this.
If a woman is being influenced 30 plus, there's a real issue in her emotional intelligence then. Because if you're a grown woman or a grown man and someone is saying something to you and you get influenced and you can't make decisions for yourself, I find that worrying. This is where my work come in. Why can't you make decisions for yourself? Of course, it then goes to like decisions being made, you know, growing up in the environment you did. We've never been able to, our parents probably didn't ask us, what do you want? All of those conditionings. But 30 plus, and you get influenced. 30 plus, someone's telling you to leave your husband and you're listening to her. 30 plus, your boys are saying, you know, let's hang out, don't go back to your wife, it's fine. You're listening to him. That's an issue. Leadership every woman wants, but they need to feel like you can. And I think a lot of women feels like you don't even need to be financially so stable. What they want to see is that you've got the work ethic. And I think that's missing because men are tired by pressure.
I think so too. You know, I think I spoke to another guest recently where we spoke, or not what I said, where we discussed like men should demonstrate the eagerness or the attitude.
Sure, you can.
Just like when you go to a job, it's all about attitude. The interviewer is looking for the attitude. He doesn't want you to know everything. Otherwise, you'll be overqualified.
Right. Show you want to. Show you have that eagerness. Show that you've got that passion to want to, right? You want to look after her. You want to be there for her. You want to support her. Because if you are not that person that she's leaning on, it all fizzles to then the children, right? You will lean on each other. And that's where the cycle continues. I promise you, if you witness someone who is, in your eyes, in your experience, someone who's an independent woman, she can be the biggest boss lady, no problem. She can be the most independent. If she is with a man who is so secure in himself and he's leading, she becomes a child next to him. She becomes, you know, what do we say in Islam? Women are like flowers, right? Or don't try and straighten a woman. We're delicate.
I'm glad you
right?
covered both sides.
Both, right? So in those things, we do. Like, it's in our nature, you know, but we need to feel like you got us in those ways for us to go to that fragile and vulnerability place.
What would a woman be willing to do for that man to go out there and hunt and you know, get the goods home, get the rewards home, get the, you know, his earnings home? Because I feel like there's one side, okay, we want you to be successful. Like, we need you to be successful because that's what we're attracted to. You know, it's not just the fact that you've got money. It's the idea that you got your act together. You know exactly what you're doing. You're a decisive person.
No, it's not money, isn't it? It's really like what we want for each other. What does family, children, all of that looks like? How far are women willing to go? You know what? There is issues when it comes to talk about communication. I think a lot of women are struggling in how to communicate these things. So they're quite flippant, or they're not really careful with how they're saying things, and the disrespect happens a lot. So, as much as a man would have wanted to do those things, it makes him distance because of how you communicate in those things. And, it's something I always say, because I see a lot of women who are like, I'm going to support him no matter what. If he's struggling, I'm there. I got him. It could just be those words like, I got you, and he feels secure, right? Knowing that she's there. Or she's there just like every day sitting there, oh, what did you do? Oh, no, that's rubbish. That negative energy, it really consumes us. So if you're doing that with your husband, know that the role that he wanted to do, or the idea he had, you've already pushed it by saying something negative. Oh, it's not going to work, or you're useless. No one wants to hear those words, because we're already kind of fighting with our own darkness that we have.
So it seems like, to help yourself, you need to make that guy or whoever is, if it's your wife that's on the leading role, then you need to support her from the back end for her to excel in what she's doing. Same with the man. Generally, we've seen in our society, men go out there and do what they need to do. I think if sisters really, really sincerely, really with sincerity, if they really supported and mentored and motivated their husband, they will see a completely different man. They have so much power to influence. Sisters have a lot of influence over men, which they underestimate.
They do, and that takes a lot of work as well, right? So I think that's where the picking and choosing happens. Because on one hand, when I say being secure in yourself, why are you so fragile as a man that what she says is going to demolish you? Why are you such a fragile as a woman that whatever you both have so much power over each other's self-worth? That shouldn't be happening. Be so secure in yourself that she doesn't need to make you feel like a man. Do what you want to do. Go and do your passion. A lot of people, men, are depressed. Why? Because, that sense of purposeness is going. And I think with both, the best thing you can do for each other is look after yourself, so you have enough capacity to look after your partner.
Absolutely. Now, in my case, my wife once challenged me to do something, and I've said this in a previous podcast as well. She said, I'll call you a man if you go and do it. I'm like, yo, that's a very, very bold, dare, but it's fine. I'll accept it.
Yeah.
That, whatever it made me do, it was just from a statement. Yeah. Why can't more sisters like my wife give the encouragement to because ultimately, if he goes out there and makes it happen, it's good for everyone.
If it works, excellent. Do you think that works?
If it doesn't work, it should be also excellent, because he failed, he tried, and he's learned, and he's going to move on to something else.
Meaning, when she says that, do you believe that they will get up and try it, or do you believe that
I think there should be an encouragement, because men generally, we want to impress. We want to generally impress in the case of a wife, we want to impress our wife. Look, I've done it, I've got this. That's in my view, the way I view it, that's what it looks like to me.
You're Bangladeshi, you're Muslim, you've been here in generations, right? So you've seen a part of life as well. So when we kind of think about that's how we see or what should happen, again, these issues are not new. These issues have been happening. If we take it back to our parents' generation, how many times have we heard our mothers struggle where a lot of money is coming in? Fathers are doing it. They're making the money. Where is it going?
Bangladesh.
It's going Bangladesh. So what is the mum doing? She's using benefit money, right? It runs deep. It didn't just happen now, but the problems are different, right? So he did make it. He was working hard, but it was always going there. So we've been made to feel like the wife and kids are not priority, right? But the moment she starts doing those things and looking, did they not support? Women did support then. And then they done the household chores.
Yeah.
Made excuses for their husbands, still done it. But all the money went there. But of course, that in itself, generational trauma, because dad felt pressure. He's the one that got picked to go to another country, so you need to look after us.
But imagine if the mom said, you know what, we're not going to go to England, and I don't want you to go and work that many crazy hours. Find another job or do something else. If she wasn't supportive, he wouldn't have been able to do what he's doing or what he's done. Like,
So
maybe
many
opening a restaurant, working crazy hours, staying out like a long whole week and coming home for one day a week. It's a lot of sacrifice as well.
It is. And I think a lot of mothers have seen that and they've told their husbands, don't. I can see this. I think a lot of mothers had empathy towards their husbands, but the empathy was just one way, where she said, I'm going to have empathy for you, but it means I'm going to have to endure. I'm going to have to sacrifice. But the empathy wasn't externally, whether it was his family, his mom, his dad, his sister that needs to get married. When we're talking about financial pressure on a man, it's a lot. I need to look after my mom, my sister, she needs to get married, back home. All of those things, he's carrying it. So what happens is when they have that much pressure, the only person they think will understand is my wife. I can't say anything to my mom. I can't say anything to my sister. I need to do that role because I'm the son, right? So much pressure. But the one that gets, the brunt of it is the wife. But we're so used to seeing that because we are so used to seeing women endure pain. And I was just talking about that the other day. Like, we are so used to, because we praise it, don't we? When a woman is going through so much pain and she still managed to maintain her marriage, we're like, she's so strong. Wow, mashallah. Why should she?
I mean, if she did it, good on her, no?
Where does it say that a woman needs to endure so much pain to a point that no one asks her, what would you like to be happy? What can I do for you? No one's asked her.
Maybe because the children were too young to even ask their mom, and the husband was away working, running the restaurant or whatever, a leather factory or something else.
Yeah, I mean,
But we've moved along in time, haven't we?
But have we though? It's similarly things are happening.
How we do things have moved on, but the fundamental has remained the same, which is, what do we as human beings want? We want to procreate. We want to, have relationships. We want to, have connections. All this remains the same.
It remains the same. And I think what's missing is, I think we need to have some compassion towards each other and self, because we're not just holding one role. We have so many roles to maintain. So if your wife or your husband is saying, I am doing my best, we need to believe each other that we're not there to attack you. If he is saying, I'm doing my best, believe him and support him. If she is saying that, believe him. Don't compare her to someone else that is doing better.
Oh my God, comparison is it can destroy a marriage.
Worst.
I've learned it the very hard way. In my life, never to compare.
Yeah.
Never to look at my brother and his relationship and how he does things. Yeah, alhamdulillah, I've learned it, and I would never ever compare my relationship, because it works the opposite way. What am I doing? What am I getting to do that he's also not doing? So there's always a two-way. You can't compare, and
You can't compare. Every single human is very different, with our thoughts, patterns, our beliefs, and everything we've been conditioned to do and how we grew up. Every single one of us. There could be 5 siblings in that same household, but all 5 of them had a different mum, a different dad, right? All of us have gone through something very differently. So the moment you start comparing, because you're like, why can't she do that? If my sister or my friend's wife can do that much, already you are making her feel like she's not enough. No one wants to feel like they're not good enough, man or woman.
But I just feel like we underestimate our ability as human beings. Not just as Muslims, we so underestimate our potentials.
We do. And social media has big influence on that. Because there was a time I didn't have internet in the house. 2 days I didn't have internet. And before that, I used to be like, I'm so busy. When you keep saying you're busy, you actually think you're busy, but you've got so much time in your hand. Those 2 days I didn't have internet, I got so much done in that day. So much. We do underestimate. We can be doing things. We can, in that day, I done a bit of self-care. I done a bit of work. I got a bit of writing done. I be, content creating. I connected, still saw the girls for brunch. There's so much I got done in that one day. There was so much time. But people are underestimating themselves. The way we say generational trauma, one thing I really want to put out here is we all have that resilience, generational resilience, because our parents worked hard. We saw that. We've learned that. Where is it gone?
Exactly. I mean, it seems that we have the work ethic when it comes to work ethic, but I'm a businessman, so I'm always like looking at things from a business perspective and how can I get more people to look into business. Like the other day I put a post out there like, if our fathers or uncles or someone has a business, even if it's a PFC, then take it on and, make it a global thing. Like, why is it that we should be embarrassed? Because if we don't, then who else will? And those businesses will just die. But back to the encouragement aspect. Let's say we're dealing with one problem at a time. And imagine like our job now is to inspire our brothers, husbands, to go out there and excel in what they're doing. What can the sisters at home do to really push the brother out through the door and, go and achieve? Because if you achieve, then I'll get the stability and the security. Yes, there might be some rough patches along the way, which is inevitable. It will happen, is expected. But if it happens, then it's good for everyone, good for the whole ummah.
Yeah. It's that, isn't it? Investing in each other. So with the sisters, I would say like, be the person that he can be, whoever he needs to be with, support him, push him, help him with these ideas, let him go and do it. And even if he got it wrong, try not to be negative about it. It's like, that's fine. Let's try something different. Let's do something different. Because ultimately, for you to pursue something, your why needs to be important. It's not, I want to make money. No, it needs to be more than that. But why do you want money? Why? What? The ultimate reason needs to be like where you emotionally feel the reason, right? Whether it's, I've seen my parents work hard, and they were struggling. I don't want that. I don't want that for my family. I don't want that for my kids. Whatever it is. But you do need to be emotionally supporting your husband when he's doing those things, because otherwise he's just going to feel like a failure.
Literally, that's what happens though. Like, I fail a lot because I try a lot of things. So the percentage of failure in my world is much higher because I'm trying more things. Sometimes I beat myself over it, and it's alhamdulillah, it's my wife that says, it's okay, like, something else will come and, you'll pick yourself back up and we'll be on our way again. So sometimes now that I'm telling you, I feel like, what, that's such a beautiful thing. Like, we underestimate all these little things that our sisters at home do. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. Once my wife went with her family to America for a month-long holiday, and I kept the kids, and I had to do everything. So I got a full experience of being, a super mom. So I was like, I have to run from work to the gym, and then I can't be a minute late. I have to run back and pick them up from school, take them to Fora, bring them back, put them to bed, and then I've got few maybe hours to myself, and then you're back at it again tomorrow morning. Trust me, those one term or something, that it was the slowest term of my life. Otherwise, you're like, it's like a cycle. It's happening. Everything is a framework. It's repeating every day.
I find that amazing though, because like when she went away, you done all of those things. So when I say as a therapist, we step into someone's shoe, you were literally stepping into her shoe and doing all of those things. So you can connect with like what she does and how it feels, right? And your why is like, whether it's I want my children to, learn properly, or, your why is what's going to keep you both together. So for the women to support, and I think, psychologically speaking, when we use heavy words, it has an impact on us. Why use the word failure? It feels so heavy. It just didn't work out. Next. Let's go next. It's like with interviews. Okay, it wasn't for you. Next. The process is we keep going so you don't give up on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very emotional, man. Like, when I think back, like all these experiences, and to my brothers out there, like, I know they'll probably hate me for saying it, but try taking that role on of being a mom and a dad and a working husband all together in one go. See, like, what happens in that 2 weeks or a month, like what is missing and what you have to do that generally gets done without you noticing. Then you will probably appreciate your wife so much more. And when you have a fight, like an argument, then you'll know, like, what, this is all so petty, so little. Just if it's something that you can forget, then forget. Talking of forget, by the way, I almost forgot this aspect. I did have a note. I have my phone on me today because I've got so many questions.
Oh my gosh, okay.
When do you forget and when do you not forget? Because if you keep forgetting, it's going to keep happening.
What are we talking about?
Arguments, maybe someone did something wrong, maybe something they done something that is not mutually agreed. Like you mutually agreed that we're not going to do this, and someone keeps doing it.
Yeah.
At what point do you say, you know what, I'm not going to forgive? I am going to forgive. Sorry, I'm going to forgive, but I'm not going to forget. It's on purpose. I'm not going to forget because I need to, hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah. I think you'll be a fool if you decide to forget things. Because when things happen in life, whether it went well or not, they are lessons. So even if someone hurt you, you need to remember what happened so you know how to be better or do better. Whether you allow someone back into your life, of course, like we can forgive them, but you need to be mindful of how they hurt you. It's like someone taking your money and then you decide to give them money again. Why would you do that without conditioning, without any boundaries? We do need to remember things. Now, when it comes to verbalizing it, and I say this to couples as well, I'm like, you need to pick and choose your battles. Not everything needs to be spoken about. Not everything needs to be argued about. Some things that really emotionally is weighing on you heavily, have conversations about it. Not for hours. Emotional capacity, right? So have those conversations, but pick and choose. Be wise about what you want to argue about. Have it out, and then that's it. Reconnect. Not everything needs to be spoken about.
100%. Sister Fahima, there's so much to talk about. One quick one for the brothers, talking on the aspect of what do we talk about and what do we not talk about. Generally, my I guess for many years, the thought is if my home is not stable, no matter how much success I have, like you'd think, why did I do it for? Like if I don't have my children, if I don't have my wife to share it with, like what's the point of all of this, this, graft and working so hard. So I think, yes, so important to pick our battles, not pick every battle because it drains you out. If you have one bust up, one argument with your wife, that could run for weeks. And that's a whole week worth of, potential productivity that's gone out the window.
Yeah. If something is continuously coming up, it means it hasn't been resolved. How do you resolve it? Validate her emotion. Validate if she's saying to her, I can understand why that hurt you. Even if it doesn't make sense, but you can understand what hurt feels like. That's it. And she'll be like, all right, he didn't dismiss it.
Sister Fahima, thank you so much for sharing your perspective, both as a professional and as a sister with us and our audience. One book I will definitely recommend, obviously you're a professional, so you don't need it, but to those who are getting married and who are already married, to read that book although a lot of things are not going to align with us Islamically and culturally, but there are some fundamental aspects that we could all benefit from. Like one biggest takeaway for me was like the whole idea of like speaking different languages and how to translate it along the way. So that was so important. And before I would lash out on certain things because I would think it's an attack on me. But it's actually not an attack on me. It's just a thing that's been spoken about. And I just need to acknowledge like it's being said. And, I understand. As you said, I understand. I've heard. Yes. And that's all it took. And that's all it takes now. I don't have to fight anymore. Alhamdulillah. But there's so much evil out there. There's so much evil eye out there. There's people doing bad things to newlywed couples, successful couples, like sending, like one thing I say about white community, if they're going to hate on you, they will probably take a legal route. With our communities, not just our communities, generally like, ethnic minority communities, it's like we'll do black magic, we'll do this just so we can hate on that person, and we need to make sure that we hate on that person. So it's like we've got so many things against us, working against us, and there's so much at play that we need to be mindful of. And I think, personally, being married, 12 years, like if you put Allah and Islam on your side, if you implement even the basics, trust me, like there's a structure, there's some sort of a stability at home. Like my uncle used to keep saying, read Surah Yasin like every morning, like trust me, your day will be so perfect. I'm like, oh, you know, it's gonna take like so long. But when I started implementing, trust me, like the day I don't read it, I know like something's like I don't expect it to happen, but it's just something is gonna, even just mentally, it's just gonna be a very difficult day.
I think it's really good that you mentioned the faith aspect, because when we're thinking about the Muslim community who go through this, getting to know each other, they take so long because they're like, oh, I need to know everything. You can't possibly know everything. There is only so much you can know until you live with that person. Do your risk assessment, do all the things you can within your capacity, and there will always be a percentage where you leave it to Allah. That's 100%. The faith.
Allah, the way He educated us, over 23 years, Quran was revealed over 23 years. He could have just said like, you know what, here's the book, you know what, get on with it. He drip fed the whole Quran to us. So yeah, we should be less maybe tough on ourselves, but get the basics right. You know, salahs and, you know, doing the adhkar, the reading. If you're married, especially if you're successful, like if you're, okay, not successful, if you appear to be successful in the outside world, just the way when you have a beautiful home, you would add extra layer of securities and alarms and everything. What about when you reach success, you know, apparently success, you have to do also up your game Islamically, and all the ingredients are there. We just don't do it. But I hope people will. Again, we can go on and on and on. Inshallah, I hope we will have another opportunity to speak to you in the very near future, inshallah. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And that's it for today on Side by Side. I hope you have found our today's discussion with Sister Fahima Ali very enlightening and insightful. If you have found this episode useful, please do consider sharing it with family and friends, and of course subscribing to the channel on the platform you are tuned into. It is your subscription that will motivate us to keep going episode after episode. And inshallah, with that said, let's catch up on our next episode. Assalamu alaikum.